Let me see if we are on, and then we will do something here. Checkity check. Am I live on the internet? My name is Seth Hurd. Formal intro to follow. 2 guests coming up tonight. This is called Seth Hurd and Friends because I apparently have at least a couple of them. Let me see if I can hear myself. Am I live on the internet? My name is Seth Hurd. Formal intro to follow. 2 guests coming up tonight. No, it looks like I am decently live. Why is that? Oh, that's what's going on. So that's what's going on. Okay. Hopefully my guest is joining me here in just a second. Why are you doing that? I'll get better at this, but in the meantime, what can I say? Kind of like this right now. Check, check, check. That should be better. Hey, what's up, 5 people who are watching? Listening back to myself in real time. There we go. What can I say? All right, the other Seth Simmons. Come on down. Hey, what's up, 5 people who are watching? Listening back to myself in real time. There we go. Dude, you look so much more like you're not in prison than me. Pretty good. Wait, let me just make sure when you pop up here that I have audio. This is like, I have not been good at like pre-testing the live. Hang on, you're on. Like you're not in prison than me. No, you're not on. Hang on. I'm kind of amazed at people, like the fact that people will hang through a decent amount of like technical crap, which is actually pretty amazing. There we go. That should bring you up. All right.
So is my background correct to you? Can you read the logo?
Yeah, the Closed-Minded Podcast.
Yeah. Okay.
Wait, is that virtual or did you actually make that?
Well, it's an image that I made. I just tiled the logo, and then I have a virtual background in Zoom. So I've got a green screen behind me.
Okay, you look more or less like a Force ghost from... Dude, not you. Buddy, come here. The dog's in here with me. I wanted to get this as professional as possible. So I thought we would just... Basically, just the first 4 minutes would be complete throwaway, and then the dog would like... He ripped my speakers off the desk the other day.
Oh,
not because he meant to, just because it got around his head. All right, formal intro. This is Seth Hurd and Friends. I would be the person whose name is in the title. What we do around here is we help you grow in career, culture, creativity, and life skills. Seth Simmons joins me first with 2 possible guests tonight. I do have about a 50% cancellation rate, so the format was 2 guests a night twice a week, but I've never had 2 guests, so we'll see. We're going to do a little bit of life skills and then probably a little bit of just kind of parenting philosophy, kind of work stuff. Not so much work stuff. I've talked all work stuff, but you are, let's go ahead and intro you. So I've met you because somebody shared something on Facebook and like we became friends.
Yeah.
That does happen as opposed to just somebody adding somebody so they can scream at them. You host a podcast I really like, which is a kind of solo-ish podcast called Closed-Minded, which obviously if you're watching the video, you can see right there. So you want to just kind of intro what made you do that?
Yeah, so I like talking about books. I like talking about what I'm reading, deep ideas, and I thought a podcast would be really fun to explore those things. So, I'm interested in things that are off the beaten path, sort of off the index card of allowable opinion. And so I wanted the place to discuss with authors their books that I'm reading and anything else that interests me. So that's basically what drives it, is my interest. So if you don't share my interest, then you probably won't enjoy the podcast. But I like a lot of different things, so I try to have fun with it.
Well, that's kind of what I'm doing here. By the way, is that crunching picking up?
No.
Oh, okay. The dog's chewing on a Diet Coke bottle. That's kind of what I'm doing here is just my I kind of, oh, geez. Frick. Sorry, the baby's like still not asleep.
I get it. You just have one. I've got four.
You got four. Can you talk about your podcast for literally 3 minutes or less, and I'll be back?
Sure. So just to rattle off some of the episodes that I've gone through, I've talked to a bunch of random people. Some were really fun guests to talk through with. One of the most recent ones is the CEO of a startup called UBDI, it's UBDI. It stands for Universal Basic Data Income. So if you've heard of Andrew Yang's shtick, which honestly I'm not a huge fan of politically, but it's an interesting concept, and I really like the guy personally. He's got this universal basic income concept, and what this startup is doing is basically providing a way for you to privatize and monetize your own data. So instead of Google and Facebook and all of the socials harvesting your info and you're getting their product for free, really you're the product. And what UBDI allows you to do is monetize your data. So you download your data from a bunch of sources, you store it in the secure vault, and then you can take surveys based upon matches against different criteria. And it's all private. It's all anonymous. It's all completely controlled by you. And she estimates that, at the end of the day, once this whole thing gets off the ground, you could potentially monetize your data for up to $1,000 a year. Privately and securely. So that was a really interesting conversation. She's a young 20-something CEO of a tech startup in California. So I had a lot of fun talking to her. Another really fun guest that I had was the co-author of a book on the Justice Kavanaugh confirmation, and it's just sort of placed that confirmation battle in the full context of Supreme Court confirmation history, going back to, I don't know, the 50s, the 60s, and then talking about Robert Bork in the 80s, Bush appointees in the 2000s, Merrick Garland, and Antonin Scalia's death, and then, culminating in this most recent battle just over a year and a half ago for Justice Kavanaugh. And they really dive into the weeds of what was happening behind the scenes. They interviewed over 100 people. It was a massive bestseller. And it was co-written by a legal mind who actually clerked for Justice Clarence Thomas. And then Molly Hemingway is a journalist. She was the other co-author. She's on Fox News a lot. She co-founded the Federalist website. So I got to talk to Carrie Severino, the co-author there. That was really, really fascinating stuff to talk through the story of Kavanaugh and what was going behind the scenes. Yeah, so just things like that. So, anything from, I did an episode on a journalist who is skeptical of Darwinism, and I talked through the arguments that he goes through and explains sort of from a journalist perspective to layman readers about what the science is saying and where the controversies are. I talked to a guy, his name is Pat Flynn, not the smart passive income Pat Flynn, but a different one. Yeah. Oh, I know, that would have been a pretty awesome steal, but this guy's really awesome too. He wrote a book on generalism, which is basically the idea that rather than trying to specialize in one topic, and I think you and I have talked about this before, actually, Seth, you should focus on getting proficient to good or great in a whole lot of different things, and then basically stack your skills to create something unique that you can bring to the market.
And that's not that Pat Flynn.
No.
Weird.
So this is a different Pat Flynn. He's really a fitness guru. Okay. That's where he makes his money. He's got a subscription program for fitness stuff, generally centered around kettlebells. Okay. But he's also a masterful copywriter and releases digital products all the time, and is a recent in the last 3 years maybe, convert from sort of rabid atheist to conservative, devout Catholic. And had a major intellectual transformation there. And he's got a podcast as well where he'll talk about fitness stuff and business building stuff. And then also he's got a Sunday school segment where he talks about faith. And that is also really, really interesting. Super intelligent guy, very articulate, very engaging, very fun. I sort of aspire in a lot of ways in terms of his production quality and his interest level to be like him. So he's a lot of fun. I got to talk to him about his book on generalism.
Yeah, by the way, you're doing much better on the production quality side of things. What are you drinking right now, by the way? It's
an Imperial Stout.
Okay. And maybe it's just like once you get to 4, you get back to it. With kid number 1 being so active, if I like have a drink during this time, like I'm just gonna fall asleep. My day started.
You develop stamina over time. I can tell you that.
You know what? I feel like I got it. Maybe this is an interesting thing before we kind of get in the main thing. I have noticed. I have been kind of weighing internally how much I should judge other people's ability to carry a load. I've been trying to be more cool about that because I posted something to Facebook today about just like, shut up. This isn't the Battle of the Bulge where German tanks trying to turn you to goo. This isn't the Great Depression. You have Netflix and takeout and, maybe you lost your job, but and hey, man, I have lost multiple jobs in my life, and I know how scary that is. It's terrifying. But in context, I posted about my grandfather who, was orphaned at the age of 2, and then during the Great Depression was working laying asphalt. You didn't get water breaks. If you passed out, they gave you a job to somebody else for the rest of the day. They drug you off the road. So I'm just like, what are you whining about? I kind of also realized that a lot of people maybe just don't have the energy, have the capacity to handle what I handle. But maybe it's because they're whiny. I don't know. So I started out compassionate, but by the end of the sentence, I just got judgmental again.
Yeah. With this COVID thing, I really sympathize for people that don't work in the information economy like I do, because at this point, my job is not at risk. I'm still able to work full time, and it's at home. And 99% of what I do in my day job, I can do, with Zoom and an internet connection. So the fear and the apprehension and the anxiety, honestly, has not touched our family in the way that it has other people that we know and a lot of people around the country. So I'm very, very grateful for that. I imagine if I were, in a position where I could work but was not allowed to, I would probably be a lot more anxious. So I feel like I want to have a lot of grace for people that are in that position.
Yeah. And I have got caught in a reduction force. I have been, fired from one job that I guess fired, let go, whatever. It's kind of only really happened once. It was immediately after a stellar performance review. All the metrics are there. I was killing it. So I get it. But man, on the other side of things, and not everybody can, but if you can, go pick up one of these shipping jobs or something like that, and you just don't want to, I don't know what to tell you, man.
I do agree with that for sure. I mean, we've got a friend who, you can just tell she's a homeschool mom. And she got a job at a local donut shop. This somebody goes to our church.
Yeah.
And she gets up at 3 a.m. and works for 5 hours doing donuts, and then comes back and starts homeschooling her kids. And it's she's just, because they wanted to pay off their debt faster. And I'm that's hardcore. And there are plenty of people that could do that, but they just don't. And they wallow, and then they accept government handouts. So those people I have no sympathy for. I'm you need to get your butt in gear.
Well, I have just never had, and I'm not sitting here being and we have this great, accumulation of wealth. It's not that at all. I've just never had one source of income since I was 18 years old. I had 3 jobs when I was 18. I've always had some sort of paycheck coming from something for my whole adult life. And man, that has saved my bacon more times than I can count. And I get that not everybody, again, has the ability. If you're a single parent or something like that, you just can't, probably.
Yeah.
But there's, I kind of go back to the Occupy Wall Street thing, and I'm just those people are just people with bad hygiene. They're sitting here, they're oh, there's no jobs, the millionaires, the billionaires. There's not one job in New York. There probably isn't one job in New York for somebody who smells like you. Yes, that's correct. But if you took a shower, you went home, you took a shower, and you just put your name down and maybe even spelled some things wrong, I bet you could get some sort of job.
We're in this era of Bernie Sanders, who unfortunately for some people tested negative for president this week. I stole that from the Babylon Bee. I can't take credit for it.
I think they stole it, by the way.
Probably.
Saving Country Music had run a headline.
They didn't steal it. They redistributed it.
Saving Country Music was on earlier this week. They did. It was a COVID joke, but Florida Georgia Line tests positive for sucking. So I think that's where it came from. But cause it's a fairly decent sized site. But yeah.
No, but right now it's fashionable to take a dump on millionaires and billionaires. But honestly, if you know anything about economics at all, you should thank God for millionaires and billionaires, because they're the ones who provide the capital for all sorts of investment and innovation and jobs all over the world.
Yeah. Well, and we saw that, and we're going to switch topics here because we've kind of gone down a rabbit hole. But I was seeing all these things about like, oh, well, this just proves the economy doesn't work for anybody because now all the people are out of money. Well, first of all, the average six-figure earner is. They've always said it was 2 paychecks away from a serious issue. And again, if you're making over 100K, it's like, okay, I'm sure there's an explanation. If you're making over 100K and you have not taken in 12 orphans and that's why you're paycheck to paycheck, come on. Cool. Maybe you screwed up this time. Get back to work. Never screw up like that again. Never get down to your last flipping dollar after 2 weeks. And again, I get it. I there are certainly circumstances. Thinking about a friend of mine that has a couple family members, kind of they had to move in because of like some disability issues and stuff like that. Who works 2 or 3 jobs to pay the bills, to support a couple of adult family members that have had some hard times. Right? Totally get that. But for most people, there's more in your control than out of it, or at least there's more in your control than
you think.
Than most people think they have. Yeah. My wife and I had this conversation of like, oh, well, what if it's the second Great Depression? Which curious to kind of get what your thoughts are. I actually think we're going to come out of this okay. But I told her, I was like, you know what? There's always roughnecking in Alaska. If literally like it got so bad that like corporate jobs like I do were gone. Which I intentionally picked a pretty, recession-proof second career, if you will, when I got out of media. If corporate jobs were gone, then there's still going to be oil being pumped in Alaska. There's still going to be those pretty flippin' dangerous fishing boats. That stuff all pays well into the 6 figures. And if you want to get really crazy, and I don't think I could do this, but you can always go work private security in like a cartel country like Colombia, and you make like $400,000 a year. That is a pretty high death rate. I know somebody that did it, and he, ex-military, ex-special forces guy. Half his crew got killed in like a year. Jeez. Protecting like rich executives. So that's the thing.
But what really matters is were the women in his force paid 79 cents on the dollar compared to him? Yeah, that gender pay gap does not exist, by the way.
Yeah, well, that would be a whole episode, so I'm not going to go there. By the way, I want to say one thing about the military, though. I just think it's interesting, with women in combat and everything, which I don't really have too much of an opinion on. I was not able to enter the military due to an extra rib on my right side, making me ineligible. But apparently they're talking about not letting tall people in because you're too hard to drag out of battle. I'm like, you realize that is the exact opposite of like all of human history. You want the giant guy, give him the axe, and he just cuts people in half. Like, I'm 6'6", just like chop. Like if there weren't people my size, Rome would have just stayed an empire till like now. It was these huge Germans that the Romans literally thought were giants, who were probably only 6'3", but like the Romans were like 5'4".
What a random requirement. Like, to me, that's an indication of how unnecessary all of most of the conflicts that we're in are. If you can get that far into the weeds of your requirements and start getting nitpicky about the height of your soldiers, come on. How about we just not send them into war?
Yeah, seeing Afghanistan is going to get turned back over to the Taliban is pretty tough, man. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, it is. It kind of sucks, but at the same time, man, it's our own fault that we've been there for 18 years with nothing to show for it. I mean, we never should have been in there for longer than dropping a few bombs on them because of, harboring Osama and then just gone home. We would have saved trillions of dollars and thousands of lives.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that there's a good transition there. I'd love to get you on about like once every 6 weeks or so, whatever you got time on. But so you kind of reached out to me, and I said, well, maybe let's have a public conversation about it. That's okay. You reached out to me about kind of like what are your thoughts about buying a gun, kind of in the post COVID-19 world, right?
Yeah.
I guess so let me give you a general, and then we'll go a little more specific from there.
Okay.
My concern with all these people who, seeing people lined up in LA to buy a gun because they're worried about, civil unrest or, honestly, I think probably as much as anything, just opportunism. That there's definitely been looting so far. This is not looting for hardship. This is looting for like, hey, TV, which is the same thing after Katrina. I mean, certainly there's some horrible things, but I believe that there weren't that many looters, but the ones that were looting were not like looking for supplies. They just wanted some stuff. It's like, oh, cool. I can go get myself some things. I get concerned when I see people, especially in very urban areas, just lining up to buy something because I actually think they're more likely to harm or kill themselves or a loved one than to protect themselves in a situation like this where there isn't time to get adequate training or to go to the range. I grew up, in the most popular deer hunting county in America. It's the most expensive place to deer hunt. So, I was always very safely, very responsibly introduced to guns. And that's something I've kind of understood since I was a pretty young kid. But even an adult, I would hate for... I would almost just rather if you just think you're going to buy a gun, throw it in your nightstand in case there's a riot right now and you're not going to get to go to the range, I would almost just tell you, like, take your chances with a baseball bat or go adopt a Great Dane or something, man. Which I'm not telling you that. I just... seeing these lines around the block in LA and stuff, it's like, I get concerned about what people are going to do.
Honestly, I think you should be telling me that if that's what I would be doing. And, speaking as someone who's never owned a gun, but is still, philosophically is basically a hardcore Second Amendment, person. I've read enough to know that, with great power comes great responsibility. And so I'm not going to if I buy a gun, I'm not going to just buy it and throw it unused and untrained and unready in my nightstand. I've got 4 kids at home. There's no way in hell that I'm going to do that. So it certainly would come with some training and some classes and plenty of practice, not just for me, but, probably for my wife too, if I could convince her to do it.
So let's go why you didn't go there then.
Why I didn't go where?
You haven't actually bought a gun until now, but you said you're a hardcore Second Amendment guy. You're obviously a hardcore First Amendment guy, and you started a podcast out of it. So
that's right.
Time just kind of weren't that interested before. What is it?
I've been interested. Culturally, just in terms of the people that I tend to hang out with, it hasn't been a huge part of the culture. I've had some friends that shoot, and so when I hang out with them, a handful of times. I've gone to the range a few times and shot a handful of times, but it just hasn't been part of my normal culture to collect and discuss and talk about guns. So I've been interested in them and just never got around to actually quote unquote, pun intended, pulling the trigger on buying one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've got a thought here for you, but I kind of want to get your take. What have you read? What have you thought about as far as going down this? So basically, there'd be 3 categories. Would be a shotgun, which if you're kind of new to this, would be normally a long-ish gun that fires multiple projectiles, BB type things. A rifle, which is obviously a long gun that fires a single projectile, and a pistol, which is either a revolver, which spins, or just a more modern handgun. What have you thought about getting, or what direction are you leaning?
I'm leaning more toward a handgun,
okay,
just for small ease of use. But I haven't really thought that much further beyond that.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm not going to get an AR if that's what you're asking.
Yeah,
I'm not going to go make Bad Boys 3.
Yeah, the AR being the ever so controversial rifle. I haven't bought one primarily just because I had never had a lot of like they're expensive and where do you they're kind of hard to find a place to shoot them at. I was living in Chicago. It's like there was nowhere to take it and use it without going back to the farm I grew up on, 6 hours away. So that I might actually build one down here, like kind of build your own as a my deer hunting rifle, just because they weigh like nothing. And I'm interested in mountain biking into a major national forest and deer hunting kind of off of a mountain bike because you get out further than other people.
Now, are you interested in building one at all? Because is there an appeal to you for the untraceable nature of it?
No, I don't have those tools. So, in my opinion, the whole idea that, they're going to like, if they were going to confiscate the most popular rifle in America, I think we'd be at a place with a lot more issues by then, as opposed to them getting my individual rifle. Ammon Bundy, the guy that caused a lot of news coverage over some grazing rights for his cattle, is now saying that they're basically going to stand between the police and this church service once they have Easter Sunday. So I can't imagine. I'm also in Missouri. And so I just honestly can't imagine that the state of Missouri is going to come for my rifle that I hand built, that one part, it was background checked. Supposedly it's not even supposed to be traced either. They're not supposed to be keeping a record of the fact that I bought it. They're supposed to be clearing me as a non-criminal to purchase it and then destroying the record. I don't know if I believe that or not, but I'm going to walk you through what I do, and it's just a suggestion, and I'm going to put a blog post up on Mighty Networks, which is something that I'm building out because whatever channel you are consuming this on is basically unstable and suppresses all kinds of stuff. And we're not saying controversial stuff. We're saying all kinds of stuff for all kinds of reasons. If you're seeing this now, you may never see it again unless you're subscribed to something I'm doing. So we're working on that. So what I've got is a pistol grip shotgun that is mounted in a safe in the bedroom. And so I thought about bringing it on camera, but I was like, I'm going to get killed on all my channels for the rest of time by all these tech networks if I do. So I'll link to it. But it's a shorter shotgun that's a pump action. And then I've got it adapted to run on 1 3/4 inch shells, because normally a gun that's that small with a big shell would be have a lot of recoil and hard to handle. My wife can handle this really well. What I think is actually maybe more important than what gun you select, or as important, is what you put on it. So I've actually got a flashlight on mine, and I've got a green laser. The reason it's green, not red, is because red gets lost in the daylight and green, turns on. So I don't have to actually aim it. If I was in a situation where my life or the lives of my family were being imminently threatened by a home invader, if it's dead of night, I've got the light on it, and then I've got the laser, and you're not going to hit exactly where the laser's at, but under extreme stress, it's much more likely that you'll be able to use it. And so I would say, first of all, decide if you're ever going to carry it or not. And that if you're not going to carry it, get a pretty big one. I like Smith & Wesson M&P if you're going for a handgun. I really like the shotgun setup just because two hands on something, you're much more likely to be able to use it effectively than one hand. I just like that under stress. But if you're going to do a handgun, I would say budget out and get both a laser and a flashlight on it, or get a laser and put a flashlight in your hand, like old school FBI style. They used to clear rooms like that. So that would be the way I would go. Honestly, I would. You can rent guns at different ranges and stuff like that. If you can get a friend to go with you, or you can have them walk you through it, that'll tell you something pretty important. Mm-hmm. If you can't do that, I would just go in and just hold them and just, in a safe direction. Obviously, don't point it at other customers or something, but just kind of see how it points, and that'll tell you a lot about it, how it fits in your hand and stuff. Honestly, I would say that most modern firearms that are for sale are all pretty good. Everybody's kind of got their preference, and some just like wackadoodle dude who has nothing to do will probably leave really nasty comments on YouTube for me saying that. But honestly, for the most part, they're they're pretty good overall. I've shot a bunch of different kinds of guns, and most modern firearms rarely jam. They're not that hard to take care of. They're actually all. I mean, it's a heck of a lot easier decision to make than like a car. Cars, you can definitely get some they're gonna be a lot worse than others. Most modern firearms, you're in pretty good shape across the board. Have you looked at storage options or no?
No, not really.
Okay. So if you're going to so your kids range in age from
2 to 12.
2 to 12. Okay. Maybe that's why you're awake enough to have a drink and I don't, because you can actually farm out some labor at this point.
Yeah, well, my 12-year-old's about to start mowing the lawn, which I'm pretty happy about.
Really? Okay. So we just bought 3 weeks before a pandemic, because I'm great at timing apparently, and our yard is so small. I have like a 1950s manual lawnmower.
Oh wow!
And it cuts really well. And even with that, I would say a full mowing job is probably under a half hour once once the yard, all the leaves are swept up and stuff from it being winter, and kind of had to do that spring cleaning thing on the yard. So yeah, I have very old school mower. Again, there's a lot of good options with how to store something. I would say don't go so cheap that you are, and I think that's my next guest. Hang on. Don't go so cheap that you got to like turn. It looks like the like slot machine where you've got a little handheld safe and you have to like, if it would be like a lock for a high school locker, you're not going to be able to use it under extreme stress. And on the other hand, I do not like trusting my life to electronics. So I don't use. I have a big fireproof gun safe that's bolted to the floor for the majority of the firearms I own. That's also just a commercial not to rob me. It's not worth it. You're not going to get that thing out of there.
Have you heard of the stop box?
The stop box? No.
I bookmarked that the other day to check into later. It's some sort of it's purely mechanical, but it fits the grip of your palm in order to unlock it. And it's not entirely clear to me how it works, but it seemed pretty cool. I think I started to get ads for it.
Oh, I think I see it. So like it's this would be the kind of thing I would recommend putting on. Yeah, that would be I actually need to get this set up where I can like screen share and do images and stuff. Maybe I'll just do that. That would be a small safe that could go in a closet or something like that. You want to run through it several times because, again, under extreme stress, your fine motor skills just go away. And I would say if you, obviously don't say it out loud, but I would say try to do it something like sort of close to your bank pin or a birthday or something like that. That's really easy to remember a combination of because
so like 7-13-84, is that what you said? What? Just kidding. I just made that up.
Yeah. So I would do that, and then honestly past that, I would make sure that you're getting out at least 4 times a year. I would really, really try to maybe kind of have a conversation with your wife about using it. And as you are comfortable, to me, you are safer with a gun in the home if your kids are introduced at age appropriate times. Which like my brother-in-law, who's what he did with his kids was, hey, if you see a gun, get away from it when they were very young, right? So that's the age appropriate conversation to have there. And like I said, I grew up doing a lot of shooting. It's so funny, like with helicopter parenting and stuff, I was so not helicopter parented and it worked well. And so was I allowed to like go shoot and go hunt in the woods by myself when I was 12 years old? I was. Was I allowed to drive across 2 states before there were cell phones to go to a student government leadership college conference by myself? When I was 16, I was. Maybe there's early cell phones, but it wasn't like now, right? So I get it. Like not everybody's gonna have, and I get the world's different and stuff. But to me, you're safer as opposed to having this like forbidden thing, or if you don't talk about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, tell me if you think this is analogous at all, but so the approach that I've taken with my kids when it comes to alcohol, because I grew up in a family that was very anti-drinking, and so it was sort of,
Yeah.
it was looked down upon, and it was this forbidden type of thing, and it was negative towards, people that we knew who were drinking. And by this point, I'm very much, okay with drinking, in moderation, of course, not getting drunk or anything. But in terms of my kids, like, I want it to be around them so that you demystify it from them. It's not this, super secret unknown, like, oh, what is beer? So that it's normalized to them. It's not this crazy, untouchable type thing. And to me, it seems like guns would be the same way. Not that I'm like, letting them handle it or anything, but I want to demystify it, but also put in a healthy fear and respect for it in my kids.
Yeah.
And in myself as well.
Yeah. I have, on each one of these topics, and we'll kind of wrap up here, and I'll do some blogging about this, and you guys can hop over to Mighty Networks when that's up. But if you look at Europe, countries where like Germany, where kids are basically allowed to drink at ages that we would find very concerning. I've got a friend from Austria that said if you're old enough to like go up and like get the glass off the bar yourself, like you can have the beer. I'm not sure I recommend that. But the broader principle is that they have much less their rates of like binge drinking in college and in your early 20s, and alcohol poisoning and stuff like that are much less, because it's not just like they're not trying to thrill seek at that point. It's just a part of their lives. I would say the responsible introduction to guns would be the same thing. That you want to raise somebody that has an idea that they could hurt themselves or somebody else. Although that whole thing about like your brain's not fully developed until you're 25 or whatever. You know what? I don't know if I believe that. It's like, as far as like, oh well, even teenagers don't realize that they could die.
Dude, everything on Joe Rogan is true. Don't you know that?
Well, no. Here's the thing. My one great aunt got the hood of her jacket caught in the power takeoff of the tractor, and her neck snapped. My great grandma got gored to death by a bull. My one great uncle, the tractor rolled over on him and killed him. I mean, like, everybody that grew up farming, it's not exactly the same as like veterans, or like if you were a veteran, you knew you lost somebody, but everybody knows somebody that lost somebody. I unfortunately knew a guy that fell through his pond, and that's probably the most recent farming death. Fell through his pond on his property, and was not able to make it out in the winter.
Wow.
And so I think, I had a pretty good idea you could die. And I think as a parent, I tend to lean towards, at age appropriate times, like the whole opioid epidemic and stuff, like kids getting really into that. It's like, okay, we probably, before that decision ever could come up, we probably need to find a way to expose you to the fact that like these people are dying, and make that really real. I know another parent that would see a dog that ran out in the road and, got run over, even when their kid's like 5 and 6 year old. If that dog had run out the road, it would be alive. You need to understand that that's what a car does to a body.
Mm-hmm.
Man, this got dark fast. Okay. So Closed-Minded Podcast. I really like everything that Seth is doing on social media. I would love to have you come back at your convenience, basically just whenever you can get here. Hopefully that was, it was really cool to have the discussion, man. And hopefully, did that help you a little bit with the, make sure you got a light and a laser on there, because
yeah. Honestly, I had not heard those two pieces emphasized, so that was helpful, certainly.
Yeah. It could be the difference in being alive and not being alive, as far as if you had to use it and use it successfully. So, Closed-Minded Podcast, go download it. Man, I'll catch you next time. I hope we do it again in a month or so, if that's cool. All right.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Have a good one.
Thanks for staying up with me, man. See ya.
All right. See ya.
All right. We got another one coming up. Guest numero dos is going to be here in just a second, as soon as I can send this over. By the way, thank you so much for hanging for episode number 3 here. I am going to kind of get more together or whatever. The day job, side gig, like everything's actually pretty hectic. Oddly enough, and I understand that a lot of people are really financially hurting and stuff right now, and a lot of people are out of work. I'm busier because I work in the digital space, and everybody's got to figure out how to communicate about this and adapt and everything else. So Rowan is my next guest, who just got the Zoom link right now. Let me talk a little bit about the Mighty Networks and just what a garbage fire social media is right now. Yeah, just this week, YouTube was purging channels just because they kind of decided that they didn't want to pay some of these creators anymore, which, you know what? It's YouTube's real estate. Like, you're just hanging out there. However, some of the reasons that people were purged seem to be pretty jacked up as far as how they were how they were purged, and how some of these channels, the content creator was literally just making a living like this, and then all of a sudden YouTube just kind of came in. It was like, boom, you're no longer eligible for monetization. In some cases, channels have been deleted completely, and I'm not talking about like conspiracy theory or really super controversial channels. Just some of them have been deleted for minor infractions, or because somebody complained, kind of like the whole social distancing thing right now. If you complain in some cities about somebody, like, you can really get them in trouble, get them fined, even if it's not true. A friend of mine, Ruslan, you can look up his YouTube channel. He did a response he's a Christian hip hop artist. He did a response to a couple of guys who really kind of made some, and not just they were atheists, but made some pretty ignorant statements about faith that just didn't know what they were talking about. He responded to them, and then they tried to put a copyright strike on his channel, which he hadn't done anything wrong. They were just pissed off at him. The point is, we got to find a place to hang out outside of that garbage. So Mighty Networks is what I'm building. It is a place to connect around career culture, creativity, and life skills, which is the stuff that this podcast is built on. And I'll get a link up and stuff. But that's why I keep pushing everybody over there, because they are not going to let you see everything. And that's not a conspiracy theory. It's not saying certain kinds of content are even being blocked. That's saying if we're going to have a direct relationship, we need to have a direct relationship. And wait, are you on? There we go. Rowan, yes, maybe. Hello. We're going to get it. So anyway, that's why I'm doing it. I would say if you were doing any kind of content creator thing, I'm texting Rowan to tell her I can't hear her. That you need to think about operating outside of Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Those things are all great tools right now. They may not all be great tools. She dropped off. She'll probably come back. Hey, buddy. You want to say hi? The dog's hanging out with me. He's my bud. We did our own grooming. Wait, we got it? There we go. Okay, no audio, though. Not getting audio. You want to check your mic input? Let me check the inputs over here. Check. So you're the second guest I've had on Zoom. So it's very likely on your end. Is your mic selected? You want to just move your mouth and I'll improvise the dialogue. I'll imagine what you're saying and talk to myself. So it's not just like my headphones are bad or something like that. I can actually see that there's no audio input coming off your channel. So I don't know how much you've used Zoom, but here I'm texting you right now. The
Oh,
little,
there it is.
there we go.
Yeah.
All right.
It just takes a minute or two. Figured it
Okay.
out.
Guest two of two of the evening. Welcome to Seth, Hurd and Friends, Career Culture, Creativity, and Life Skills. Rowan went to the college I went to, and then worked at a radio station I worked at sort of part-time, and then discovered that you live in St. Louis, which you have done for, I don't know, a while now, right?
Yeah, about 7 years.
Okay, gotcha. And you got a couple things going on in life. I kind of want to talk about career and side hustle stuff because I've seen some of the stuff you're doing on Instagram. Like, we should talk about that. So, you've been kind of doing some coaching, consulting, side job stuff outside of your management job, right?
Yeah, that's right. For about 9 years, I've been in retail and hospitality management, and my favorite part of that job is mentoring and taking people from where they are to where they want to go. I kind of see the result, and I reverse engineer that, and we create like an action plan to get there. And I've been doing that for 9 years, and that's my favorite part of my job. So taking that and expanding it into my side hustle.
Okay. That's been one of the things. I mean, I've only been 3 episodes deep on this particular podcast. This is, I don't know, my fifth or sixth podcast I've been on or a part of. One of the things I have kind of harped on pretty hard is like, man, I just don't know why people only have one source of income in 2020. Especially going into something like that. And you know what? Maybe this caught you off guard. Maybe you're kind of a mid to younger millennial that had never seen a time this crazy because you were too young to see the housing fallout in '08. But to me, it's just like, I mean, everybody should have some sort of other thing coming in at least part of the year, unless you're like rich. And in that case, like your trust fund is still coming in. I don't know.
That's another type of revenue.
Yeah, I mean
sure.
that's technically revenue. So let's talk about it because I think that people are really trying to figure it out right now. If you're not working, and you may not be working at all, right? Or are you? Or
I
what's going
am.
on? Are you working?
Yeah. So my day job has been shut down. I no longer
Yeah.
go to my day job, but at home I've been building my personal brand and then blogging. I guess blog for a few companies. So I've been keeping busy.
Okay, gotcha. Very cool. Man, when I asked you to be on, I guess I hadn't even thought about whether or not the day job was shut down. I'm actually
Yeah.
fairly hopeful that we're going to be up and running in May, and I'm fairly hopeful based on the a pretty huge dip that West Germany went into in like the late 1940s that they came out of. Actually we may come out with a lot more demand even than supply. That when people can go to movies again, they're going to buy every movie seat. When they can actually go buy stuff again, they're going to go buy a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I'm just not sitting here doom and gloom. Like I think the world is ended. If we are back up and running, and there's a lot of financial assistance been provided to businesses to keep people's jobs. That's what we need is we need people to go back to work, get a paycheck, and then resume life. And if we all do that, I think we pop back up. Um,
Yeah, I agree. I think is that the question is how fast people can bounce back. And there's been some talk in my space is personal growth and development, and whether we need to allow ourselves to process and be okay with shutting down for a moment. And then the other camp thinks, no, this is the perfect time to start something new and get things going. But I think you kind of have to listen. It's a very personal thing. But how fast can we come back out of it? It's okay to have those fears and anxieties, but then where do you draw the line and say, okay, now it's time to move on?
you know, I do think because I mean, full disclosure, like I'm going to start another round of counseling probably at some point this year because I'm like just basically because I'm a hard person for me to live with. I have such like crazy high expectations for myself. It's primarily the thing I haven't figured out. So that being said, like, do you if you're unemployed right now and you have an opportunity to build something or whatever, do you need time to process it? Like, has any other generation ever thought like that? And I'm somebody that, my grandfather was actually a quasi-famous psychologist in the 1950s. I'm pretty big into therapy. I am pretty big into, medication is very, very helpful to some people if it's the right thing. I'm into all that. I am a proponent of all that. But this idea that like you need time to process what every other flippant person is going through, I don't know. I don't think I buy it. You can push back on that.
Yeah, I mean it's hard because it's a very personal thing. But I think if you don't allow yourself the appropriate space to process through your emotions, which are valid, then you can be going through the motions and everything seems to be okay, and then the fallout happens down the road in some way that you might not have anticipated. It can creep in. It's kind of like corking a bottle, then shaking it up. You throw it into the street and it explodes. I think you got to listen to yourself and know if you need to process that. My panic attack was 5 minutes, but I had 5 minutes and then I moved on. But that was me. Other people might need a day. They might need a week. I think the important thing is, when is enough enough? And you've got to pick yourself up at some point, because it's, it's survival at some point. You got to make sure that you are in a place where you can move forward at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it. Like, have we been shut down? Has St. Louis been shut down for, man, everything is so run to go 2 or 3 weeks?
2.5 weeks, I think.
2.5 weeks?
Yeah. Okay. Like, this is the 3rd week.
Okay. I mean, I have straight told people too, when I say like, go get a job or do whatever you got to do whatever you can. And maybe you can't work. I would still get up and do something every day. Do something. I mean, do a bunch of push-ups every day. If you're in a situation where, you can't work, you're high risk or something like that. I mean, if you can't do a bunch of push-ups, like clean obsessively, just do something. Sorry.
I can see your mind's going somewhere else.
I think that people have
follow that trail.
No, I think people have kind of maybe seen a couple of things I've said on social media as like, oh, you're kind of jerkish, even though I've gotten overwhelmingly positive responses of like, oh, well, I tend to choose compassion during this time. Okay, compassion is not handing the alcoholic another frickin' drink. Compassion is not telling people that on week 3 it's cool to be doing, an entire series of Netflix every 3 days. Like, at some point you've got to get up, and you've got to realize too that this is still looks like probably, God willing, the biggest thing that this generation is going to face, or kind of this group of people who are alive. It's 10x 9/11, I would say. I mean, it's that big, but it's still fairly relatively minor.
I think there's something to the fact, like, you got to find that line, and when you cross it, to your point, like, go out and run, go out and do something, pick up a hobby, clean your house. Just moving your body kicks the cobwebs out, and then that starts maybe some creative process for you. I know that works for a lot of people. Just moving is it's like that shower brain almost. You've heard of this, where you're thinking of an issue, you're trying to problem solve something, and you're so focused on it that you can't think of it. And then you go hop in the shower and you're thinking of other things, and all of a sudden you have this idea, like you've solved the problems because you're not thinking about it anymore. When you go move your body, that can really shake some things loose, and you can take this time to start writing or start your hobby or plan your project or something. It's a really good time to rest. I think rest time is also productive time, because all nature has a rest time, right? We've got summer, we've got fall, we've got winter, which is
Yeah.
a rest time, and then it comes into spring, but you have to have that dormant period in order for spring to come, and the renewal comes after that. So sometimes that rest time is beneficial as well.
Yeah. I that's something I've realized. Like I said, that I'm a big believer in counseling. One of the things I've realized is that coming from farm, I grew up with all these stories of how my family made it through and nobody else did because of just crazy effort and great decision making skills. Both sets of great grandparents on my mom's side farmed within a few miles of each other. My grandpa's grandparents had the biggest farm in the county, were by every possible standard for a farmer, quite rich. Probably at that point had one of the 5 biggest houses in the county. And they lost everything because when the Depression hit, they were still using labor as opposed to tractors for their field work. So they had people driving teams of horses. My grandma's parents had bought tractors, and that was a huge thing. And then they pulled off things that you didn't think were possible. My one great uncle grew an absolutely huge farm because he was able to work more acres even by himself than people thought was humanly possible. The thing about that was, though, that I forget when I try to drive myself that hard is that there are months where you really don't have a lot to do in farming.
Yeah.
And in the knowledge economy, that no longer exists. I mean, you can be busy on something. There is no natural break. This is all kind of so new. We haven't exactly figured out, we don't have instincts on how to deal with that. But I didn't know what day it was today, until about halfway through the day. Right. And part of that
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Part of that's definitely the quarantine. Part of it's, I'm still trying to figure that out. I would say that's one of the bigger challenges in my 30s is how to have those, boundaries and that cycle of kind of rest and reset, and actually taking stock and believing in the idea that it's worth it, that it's not just laziness. Michael Phelps thing, right? Greatest swimmer ever by far, trained 7 days a week for years on end because, nobody else is training 7 days a week. They're doing 6, so I'm going to do 7. That obviously paid off for him. But even he could only do that for a couple of years, right? He didn't.
Right.
Do that
How
for his
long
whole
can you
life.
sustain that? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's funny. This turned into just like a therapy session type of vibe.
I think quarantine has brought out a different side for most people.
Yeah. Because I want to get into what you do, and I want to say this. I think that one of the things that hold people back from moving forward quickly, and this is in whatever. This is in health. This is in career. This is in hobbies. I really want to make the transition to hunting with a traditional recurve bow for bow season. And at some point I may just need to take lessons from somebody who's better than me. This dude I know from New Zealand is the bow is a part of his arm, right? And I can take 7 years to get that good, or I could probably get that good about that good with him in 6 months if I just went and took some lessons, right? Yeah. And so I think that's one of those things. It's amazing the kind of crap people will buy and they won't put money into their career, into drastically getting better at something faster, and it's one of those things that just comes back and bites you. So that's something I've always tended to put money into, kind of education, classes, career, pretty high up in the budget. And especially right now, as you see things are changing, I would do that. So what have you been working on? You're kind of home, you're building this thing.
Man.
What's that look like?
I've been out. If I could speak English, sorry. Lots of things. So currently right now, I can't tell how loud I'm being. I've got 2 kids in the other room. Yeah, so I've just recorded my worst case scenario journaling method, which is something that I used to go from fired to hired within 24 hours, about a day turnaround. Um, it's a method that I developed. It's a self-coaching practice where I take myself from, here's my worst case scenario, fear, doubt, worry, and then let me take myself through this, so I no longer put fear in the driver's seat. I'm in the driver's seat. How can I troubleshoot this, and how can I reframe my mindset into having a positive perspective on this? Um, because when the tinsel hits the fan, you're going to need a better mindset than, oh, tinsel. um, but so yeah, last January I was let go from my company. It was a global decision to eliminate my job title. And luckily, a couple months before that, I had journaled through, what if I lose my job? Now, I didn't think I was going to, it wasn't in the cards. This wasn't something that I thought was going to happen, but it was a fear of mine as the sole breadwinner for my family. What if I lose my job? And I took myself through this. And on vacation, I got a phone call from my boss, and he said, I'm so sorry to be the one to tell you this, but the company has decided to eliminate the job title. And he did offer me a position to stay with the company at a lower salary, less responsibility. Basically, it was a step down, but he offered me to stay. And I was able to say, you know what, this is actually awesome. Thank you. No, thank you. It's perfect time for me to walk away. And I was able to make that decision from an empowered place rather than a scared place where I'll just take anything I can get, it wasn't the right decision for me and my family at the time. So I was able to walk away, troubleshoot right away, got an interview within 2 hours, was hired the next day.
Wow.
So, yeah.
As opposed to, I'm going to contrast that with, I don't know how much I would like wallow in this and maybe just do this in the one episode and shut up about it. But man, I probably about when you knew me, like 25 to 29. I thought I'd kind of painted myself into a corner skill set wise, and I'd just done media, and basically I'd done cable TV and radio, and I'd done writing, and I wanted out of it, and I just thought I wasn't good at anything else. And man, I don't know. I thought I kind of was worst case scenario. I just had to hold on to what I had. I would do. It is the most screwed up part of my life, and not that I really did anything bad. I just felt like every decision I made wasn't was just basically counterproductive to moving me somewhere in my life. 25 to 29, I probably did, in my opinion, almost everything wrong. At least from a career strategic standpoint. I don't go down to like, well, I shouldn't have gotten Mexican food that one Tuesday.
That's a real butterfly effect.
Yeah. But honestly, I wouldn't do any of it again. And I feel like it took me several years. It probably took me 6 years to get back on track from 4 that I regretted, of where I wanted to be. And if I would have done that, I probably would have gotten out of it a lot faster. I would have had the courage to just walk away.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you think? What would you do differently if you could go back and tell 25-year-old Seth, steer clear? What would that sound like?
Buddy, the dog's eating the wall. Buddy.
You saved the bowl. Can you hear me? Uh-oh.
There we go. Now?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so this is Finley. He's very smart, but he's a puppy. He's half Great Pyrenees. Half say hi, buddy.
Oh my gosh. Hello.
He's going to be he might be big. I don't know. The internet said that the crossbreed's supposed to get up to up to 100 pounds, which was what I was looking for. He's about 50 right now. But he's
so cute.
He's super smart, but he was like biting the wall. Like, okay, we're going to stop you from doing that. Amanda and I we did self grooming tonight. So what do you think?
Yeah.
And
Not
it
pretty good.
it wasn't too
Much
bad.
better than
It
I could do.
took us about an hour and a half.
It's a lot of fur.
Yeah, it was a pretty big undertaking. Um, but what I would have said when you did worst case scenario, like,
Hmm.
dude, you're 25, 26 years old. I think I had a terrible fear of like not paying my student loans and then having my credit dip and then like never being able to recover from that. And if I had to do over again, I honestly might have just said whatever, sold a bunch of crap and slept in my car and maybe like driven out to Montana or something like that, tried to work a ski lodge for a bit. I thought
Yeah.
if I did something like that, like I would never get back on track. I had such a linear view of
Hmm.
work. It's like, well, if I don't do this, then I won't be competitive here, and I'll never recover. And that's just the opposite of like the way things actually are. You can take some big breaks in there. Don't make them too long, or people think you're in prison. But other than that, you can take some pretty big breaks, buddy. Just hang
Yeah.
out with me. Just hang out, bud. Um, so that's the main thing you're kind of trying to walk people through right now as you're kind of launching the side hustle thing, is the quick turnaround, right?
Yeah. It's the what do you do when things go wrong and how to coach yourself out of it. I mean, you can find being in the personal development space for as long as I have, I didn't know that life coaches, business coaches, mentors were even a thing or accessible unless you were very wealthy or
Yeah.
ran a company. But having mentors of my own now and um, realizing that you don't have to run a huge multiple $1 million company to have them, um, it's really, like, to your point you said earlier about investing in yourself and investing in education and like the bow that you want to learn. I don't know anything about bows. You mentioned a specific kind of bow, but you would pay this guy to learn it because you would condense decades into days, as Tony Robbins likes to say. Um, yeah, I mean, I think that if I can take myself out of a really bad, sticky situation and flip that around because I'm able to not panic, I'm able to coach myself through it, I'm able to have a positive mindset around it so I don't freak out. Um, that's something that is very relevant right now. It was intended to be a proactive approach to dealing with a stressful situation, but you can absolutely do it during a stressful situation as well, and it would be just as effective.
Yeah, and as people are thinking through this, because I've been thinking about kind of trying to get an online discussion going about what can you what can you really do that's better than Uber, that's better than Postmates as far as doing something, and by all means, do those while you're figuring out the other thing. Uh, but I am surprised at what I'm seeing work pretty well from people who are just pretty dang active on Twitter. There's one actually probably guest I'll have on in the future, and she's some sort of relationship coach or something, and I'm just paying attention to her to like see how she's growing the business. Um, I think she just has a regular job. She's not a psychologist or anything, and she's just somebody that got divorced, then like remarried at 40 and is happy, and she's doing some kind of like relationship coaching around
Yeah.
that. And you might be like, well, that's stupid. And what I would say to that is like 25 to 29, what I just mentioned, basically there's almost nothing I shouldn't have hired a coach for. I was in really good shape. I was in really good shape actually then. So I mean, I did the Ironman in that space of my life. But other than that, it's like I probably could have had 5 coaches and saved 3.5 years of this whole thing. So odds are that you may actually have something that is that you have that's valuable, if you just go do it. Like, so what made you think, I gotta go to bed here in a little bit, but let's do a couple more. What made you think about like launching this, or made you realize you had something that was valuable? How hard was it to step out, like, because I think other people ought to do what you do.
Yeah, it's definitely it's hard to bet on yourself, but I think it's harder to rely on other people to make the best decisions for you. I think working in the corporate world for almost a decade, you're always relying on somebody else to cut your check. And like I just said a little bit ago, January, I got laid off. You can't always rely on other people. So I actually think it's less risky to bet on yourself than to hope somebody can pay you a check. So that's kind of the catalyst for starting something new. I've always kind of wanted to work for myself, but I know that your mess can be your message. It's a pretty popular saying, but it's true. Having gone through not only this, I've coached myself through the loss of my grandfather this year. My washing machine caught fire. Luckily, nothing happened, but a few scorched towels. I got pulled over twice. These are all things that I've been able to help myself through. And it's not that I don't feel fear or panic or freak out, but I can approach it from a different perspective and get myself through it. And I've trained my brain to be a problem-solving brain instead of problem focused. So, what you think about expands. So if you constantly think, oh, everything's going wrong, well, no one likes me, or I never get along with my bosses, then you're never going to get along with your bosses and everything will go wrong. But the flip side of that coin is true.
And I'm going to say up there on the genius scale that are at the very top end of the IQ scale. But the research shows that you can actually move your IQ by about 30 points through regular study, through good habits, etc. And that's something to remember during this time, that the decisions you make determine the brain power you have to a certain extent, which will determine whether or not you can get yourself out of scrapes, and quite frankly, will determine whether or not you make funny. I've been up since 5 a.m. Big funny. Make money. Whether or not people want to be around you. Whether or not you have something to say. And I get it. Like, not everybody is a traditional reader, but I just don't know. I don't personally know anybody that's made any significant money that hasn't also read a whole bunch of books. And a lot of times anymore, they're audiobooks. Cool. Do that.
Yeah.
And if it's not that, then read some other things and, get better at skills with your hands or whatever. But all the evidence shows if you're not doing new things, that you're atrophying, down to even like patients with, early Alzheimer's, dementia. If they can like learn an instrument or learn dances and learn new steps, that will actually like ward off those horrible diseases for a certain amount of time.
That's right. Yeah. And there's two sorts of people. You've got people with that fixed mindset and you have people with a growth mindset. And it's always stuck with me. I was helping a young lady out at work, an associate of mine, and she wanted me to do something for her as far as I do her a favor. And I was not allowed to do this. It wasn't something that the company it wasn't something I could do for her. And she took that as a big personal offense. And basically, I can't go into a lot of the detail, but she had power over that situation, but she thought she was powerless. And I told her she absolutely had a choice. She could do what she wanted in this situation. She said, nope, it's done. It's not anything I can do. So she could have changed that for herself, but she decided that she couldn't. So she didn't. But, you don't always have control over a situation. Like, for example, with quarantine, you don't have control over this, but there are certain things that you can do. You can download podcasts. You can download the public library in St. Louis. We have apps on our phones where you can actually get the audiobooks and you can get the books on your phone to read. There are free resources everywhere. So it's really Google is a great place to start. You can pretty much find anything on the internet if you want to look.
Yeah. And especially at times like this, the only reason you're not learning something here is because you haven't developed the discipline to say, I'm going to be able to stay on task for, a certain amount of time. I think that's one of the things that that really, as we talk about career and that type of thing, um, one of the major things that separates people from who do really well, in whatever field from people who don't is that now almost everywhere you have to manage yourself to some extent, unless it's a very, very basic intro high school job, right?
Right.
And that's one of the most lacking skills is people who can figure out how to manage themselves. It's actually back to this whole thing of, of getting coaching and things you're weak at and stuff.
Yeah.
I will even say things I'm strong at with other people, it's harder for me to do myself. Like I can knock out marketing plans and come up with really solid stuff for other people a lot easier than I can do it for myself because I know me. And I take too many shortcuts. I jump around too much. I think things will work that I would never tell somebody else to do. It's for myself, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's an odd thing to be, kind of, quote unquote, blind to your own fate. But it's, that just back to, what you're doing and why I think, not everybody who like checks us out, like probably is going to be the perfect fit or whatever, for what you're doing. But as the economy recovers, as you've got cash, I sure as heck would look at how do you make you better than I would just look at buying more consumer crap, right? You can live without a lot of stuff. Like you can sit on a stained couch for 6 more months and choose to make yourself better first.
Yeah, I agree. I would always invest, bet on yourself before you bet on anybody else and invest in yourself too.
Yeah. Rowan, man, how do I say your last name again?
Woolsey. Woolsey.
Okay. It'd been like, I don't know, 8+ years. So I couldn't remember if it was like it's Woolsey. I couldn't remember if it was Woosley.
A lot of people say Woosley. But it is L before the S. But I get, I will answer to both because I've gotten that forever.
Okay. I got called Seth at the DMV one time. Talking about people not developing themselves and, not continuing to work on their brain power.
It's a pretty classic name.
It's just like, I feel like if a name is only 3 or 4 letters, like you just have no excuse to like screw it up. I mean, it's not some like crazy long Eastern European name.
Maybe they thought it was French or something.
I doubt.
Seth. It's beautiful.
I doubt that's where they were going, but yeah. So just as far as people connecting with you, because a lot of people are going through this right now.
Yeah.
Really need to get at it faster. Just Instagram or where are you set up at?
You can hang out with me on Instagram at Rowan Volmer. That's a different last name, but it's, that's my handle. That's my husband's last name. Rowan Volmer, Vollmer. And then powerbuttonlife.com is where you can find me too. And I have a free resource where you can learn how to self-coach with the worst case scenario journaling method on there, available to everybody.
I think you gotta do that. I will. I'm gonna try to do that sometime here soon. I've like I said, I've gotten a lot better about that, but this ain't the week to add one more thing.
Keep it simple.
But that's something I'm gonna try to get done by the end of the year. Rowan, if you want to come back and hang, that'd be very cool. Maybe we'll get you on with less technical issues, and my dog won't eat the wall next time and stuff.
Awesome. I'd love to come back. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that's going to be it because I got to clean the kitchen and go to bed. This is Seth Tower, Hurd and Friends, the podcast video, audio thing that I do. This is episode number 3. Once again, I will post some links later on social media as the best place to connect is not on the big tech networks. Building on a thing called Mighty Networks around people who really do want to get better at stuff and meet other people who are doing that. So, Ron, maybe you can even drop by on that. You can go back and between the 2 guests, I sort of ranted a little bit more on that. But one thing I'm just thoroughly convinced of is that you just you can't win long term with the algorithms that Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube are run on. So you got to, if you're gonna have meaningful connections, they got to exist somewhere else. So I'm working on that right now. So, All right,
Very
it's
good.
been episode 3. If you want to share this up, that would be great. And I'm going to hang up and we'll stop the recording. And I haven't really figured out how to end these yet, so we'll just say bye.
Bye.